Hello chess friends and welcome to Zarov's chess channel and welcome to our French defense series. So in this series I'm going to show you good ways how to play as white, how to play as black, because I think the French defense now these days is very often played, so I think we can learn some strategical ideas, some nice opening preparations for both sides. But if you have followed my YouTube chess channels I've created already 3 videos in this French defense series, but I've only explained a good way how to play as white against the French defense. So for those who have troubles maybe to play against the French defense, I think I found a good way. You can maybe use it in order to have a nice opening preparation against this very static opening. So as I said in my previous videos, in this continuation of the series, we'll analyze now the main lines of the French defense from white's and from black's perspective. What are the ideas? What are the strategical elements? What are the possible tactics? What are the main maneuvers in the French defense? Because there are many maneuvers. Because the French defense basically is a static opening. So when we have central statics, you should try to find improvements of the position of common pieces. So I think we'll have fun, and I think most of you had also some troubles while facing the French defense, or maybe you played the French defense with black but faced some opponent's ideas and you didn't know what to do. So in order to show you this, I've prepared now the common strategies, the common ideas of the French defense, and basically we can say immediately that the French defense is really a static position. So the French defense is a static opening, and it's really closed opening because the center is closed, and the pawn structure in this in a chess game tells us basically what kind of a game we'll play. So in the common classical or normal variation of the French defense, we can see that after e4 your opponent plays the move e6, d4, d5, and now after knight to c3, knight to f6. This is now the normal or the classical variation. We have now the move e5, and after knight to d7 we can really talk about a close position in the center, because we have now blocked pawn structure, so we don't have dynamics in the center. The pawns are basically stopped, they cannot move, and the only way to make progress in these types of position is to create flank attacks. So from white's perspective, it's of course the move f4, f5. From black's perspective, it's maybe the move c5. So when we talk about these types of positions, we should always say that we have the so-called directed attacks. So it means directed attacks are the pawn structure in the center is showing us the direction of the attack. So you see we have now the d4, e5 sort of pawn chain, which tells us we should really attack on the king side. So we shouldn't make progress here with some a3, b4 moves. We shouldn't do that, because our directed attack tells us we should really only keep our attack on the king side. The same for black. Black should continue his attack with you see the pawn chain e6, d5 tells us we should really try and attack on the queen side. So black will make progress with potential c5, b5 moves, a5 even moves if the position allows it. So how to handle this opposite side attack games? So there are these rules in opposite side attack games that basically you should block your opponent's side where he is better. So from white's perspective, you should maybe sometimes try to block it with a4 if the position allows it. Maybe with you should really try to keep a compact position on the queen side. You should never allow your opponent to spread his wings on the queen side. And one of the ideas that you can make here is maybe to play knight to e2 and maybe c3 to keep a further compact position, because we want to keep the pawn chain. The pawn chain is good because when we have this pawns in the center, nothing can happen in the center. That's the main problem. And black will try maybe to sometimes create some kind of a blockade here with h5 moves, because in some occasions you see that white will try maybe expansion here with moves as h4. Then sometimes black is trying to play h6, g5 to keep a compact position on the king side. So in this opposite side attack games, as I said, you should block the side where you're weaker, attack the side where you're better. So what to say further about the French defense? The main tactical problems are basically happening in the center. So there are maybe from white's perspective, some if you could just imagine some knight to g5 moves, then there could be some maybe tactical possibilities around the square e6 or maybe around this square f7. So the main tactical issues are happening basically in the center. From black's perspective, the main tactics will be coordinated probably around this square d4 after potential c5, maybe queen to b6, knight to c6. So from black's perspective, black could maybe try some tactics around the square d4. So in the continuation of my explanation of the French defense, I would also point out this favorable trades of pieces. So what it means is basically that when we have always this blocked pawn structures in the center, you see white has these 2 pawns on the dark squares, black has 2 pawns on light squares. If we evaluate the bishop strength in these types of positions, we should go into favorable trades of pieces. So it means if you could just imagine this position from white's perspective without the dark square bishop, this would be a perfect position, because then the light square bishop would come very actively into the game, and basically the good bishop of blacks is of course the dark square bishop, because it still has a good diagonal and it supports the possible c5 attack. So on the other hand, black would love, I think, to give up maybe his light square bishop for white light square bishop, because so far the light square bishop of blacks doesn't have a good activity, as it is blocked out by its own pawn on e6. So when we talk about positional trades of pieces by bishops, you should, from white's perspective, somehow try to trade off the dark square bishops. From black's perspective, you should try to trade off the light square bishops. So some other positional trades of pieces can be that you give up sometimes a bad bishop for a good knight. So when we talk about block positions like in this one, the bishops sometimes are not good. They're not so good on the board. So if the position gets too closed, maybe it's good to really give up a bishop for a knight. So whenever you feel that your bishop is bad, that your opponent knight is simply stronger, give up your bad bishop for a knight and go maybe into positional endgame. So when we talk further about the French defense, knight maneuvers are really the most important things that you should realize in your positions, but also in your opponent's position, because your opponent would try to do the same. Because in blocked positions like this, the knight has always a better flexibility than a bishop. The knight will always find a way into the game. The bishops are, of course, moving only on their squares. For instance, the dark squares is dark square bishop is moving only on dark squares. On the other hand, a knight will find a way into the game somehow, and that's why knight maneuvers are basically the main attacking possibilities for both sides. So what I never liked about the French defense, that basically it's won or lost in this tactical battle sometimes in one sudden move. So basically you can play maybe 20-30 moves very well, but then comes a sudden move, you miss some tactics. So again, I'm pointing out, I wouldn't recommend it to many players to play this French defense, because it's too blocked. A better player will outplay you with some strategical maneuvers. You won't find maybe some improvements of the position of pieces. So that's why I always recommend you to play a more aggressive way. From black's perspective, at least you should maybe choose a Sicilian. But okay, for French defense players, I think this will be a perfect series. We'll explain some strategical elements from white's and from black's perspective. And today, in this introduction video, we are starting with our normal or classical variation. So in the continuation, I'll gonna make also some more videos about the normal or classical variation. But in this video, I wanted to show you a winning game by white and a winning game by black, in which basically all of these principles that I've written here are applied. So here it's a game played by Magnus Carlsen against Laurent Fressinet. Here you see we have this blocked pawn structure in the center. As I said, white is trying this common attack on the king side. Black is trying the common attack on the queen side, because, as I said, we have this opposite side attack game and this directed attack by both sides. So what Magnus is doing here, immediately after the move knight to e2, which seems like a surprise because you basically played with your piece twice in the opening, but what white wants to do after move c5 is to keep the pawn chain, because we want this position in the center to be static, and we want the position in the center to be compact. We are not allowing that this center is opened, because many times what I didn't mention so far, you see, and I've written it here, that you can stay sometimes with your king in the center. So that's a really good thing, but it can be also sometimes a bad thing. So far, when we see that the position in the center is blocked, you see, it's sometimes good to stay with the king in the center, because the king is sometimes in the French defense even better in the center than maybe after kingside castling. Because if black castles too early in the French defense, then after potential bishop to d3 moves, you can risk some attacks by the bishop, maybe even some Greek gift tactics, like the common bishop takes h7 sacrifice here. So sometimes you see that black will stay with his king in the center. Don't be surprised by that. Sometimes you see that your opponent, from white's perspective, that the king will go maybe to f8, that he will not castle at all. So don't be surprised by these moves. These are common French defense moves, and that's why I think some of you have seen some good games in the French defense by both sides, but you never understood maybe the strategic elements of this opening, and then you play it by yourself. Then you make this maybe the same move order, but basically you don't know why you did these moves, why you played this move. And you see here in this particular game, knight to e2, perfectly fine move by Carlsen. Here he played the move c3, and now he's keeping the position compact on the queen side. As I said, in this opposite side attack games, we are trying to keep the side where we're weaker blocked, and we are trying to attack the side where we're better. So here, knight to c6, we have knight to f3, b5, and now a3. You see Magnus is trying to keep still a compact position on the queen side. We have a5, and now knight to f4. We have bishop to a6, and this is what I meant. This is this potential opposite, this potential favorable trades of pieces. So it means that you see this, the light square bishop of blacks wasn't good. It was blocked out by pawn on e6. So basically this is a bad bishop. What black would love to do is give up maybe his light square bishop for this good bishop, because as I said, white's main idea is to play something like bishop to d3 and attack here the h7 square. So in the game h4, Magnus is counter-attacking on the king side. We have this opposite side attack game in which both sides are trying to attack the queen side and the king side. So h6, we have bishop to d3, and now queen to b6, bishop to e3, protecting our center, and now bishop to e7. Here castling play by Magnus Carlsen. We have now c takes d4, and now knight takes d4. So of course you cannot take immediately this pawn on h4, because there are some discovered attack possibilities, maybe knight to f5, then simply taking the bishop. So here knight takes d4, bishop takes d4, and after bishop to c5, I think Magnus has solved his first positional problem. He gives up basically a bad bishop, which is blocked out by its own pawn. He gives up his bishop for a good bishop by his opponent. So this bishop has a good activity here now. So now after b4, black is really forced to give up his good piece. So if we evaluate this position now from this bishop's activity, I think white is better, because white has still a good diagonal with this bishop. On the other hand, Magnus Carlsen accomplished here that basically black's light square bishop is blocked out by its own pawn on b5. So that's what I meant about this maneuvers, about this relation between bishops and pawns, because these pawns are, of course, as I said, on dark square, so you should always have a light square bishop on the board. So in the game we have a takes b, a takes b4, and now b5. So g5, pardon me. Queen to b6 is not an option here, because you get simply bishop takes b5. That's the main problem. If you take queen to d1, then bishop takes d7 first, king takes, and now rook takes d1. Still, this is a better position for white. Of course, we have now a pass pawn situation, and still, if we evaluate this position by this bishop's activity, this three pawns are on light squares, so you have a light square bishop, which shouldn't be a good position here for black. So we could continue even to play something like rook to a5, rook to a1, doubling up rooks and similar ideas. So after the move a takes b4, here black tried g5, we have a knight to h5 by Magnus, and now finally this move queen to d4, knight to f6, we have king to e7. The problem is, again, if you take knight takes f6, then you get this discovered attack, bishop to b5, and you lose the queen. So that's why king to e7, and now knight takes d7. Again, the same problem. Black cannot take here. King takes d7 is not a possibility. Again, bishop to b5. So in the game, queen to b4 was played, and now knight to b6 by Magnus, king to rook to a7, and now queen to f3. And in this position, Laurent Fressinet resigned. So you saw how Magnus Carlsen simply applied this common rules, blocked pawn structure in the center, attacked on the king side fastly, trying to do this positional trades of pieces, kept his light square bishop on the board, which is the most important thing, traded off his bad dark square bishop for a good dark square bishop by his opponent, went into some tactical battles. Okay, this is Magnus Carlsen, he calculates, of course, these things very, very well, but I think we can understand this game that he played with his opposite side attack games possibilities, with this king in the center possibilities. You see both players delayed castling for a while, so don't be surprised, as I said, by these ideas of your opponent. Sometimes it's even possible for you to stay with the king in the center. Please realize these possibilities, because these are very important strategic elements of this very nice opening. So I wanted to show you also a losing game by white, so winning game for black. Again, in this classical or this normal variation, it's a game played by Garry Kasparov against Teimour Radjabov. This was, I think, one of the best chess games played by Teimour Radjabov, in which he really crushed Garry Kasparov. Again, we have this classical setup, and now f4 played by Gary. He's trying, of course, to crack the position around this square f5. So again, a common idea of the French defense. Basically, it's another sideline of the French defense. But after the move c5, you see the problem now about this opening, that you don't have, like Magnus Carlsen here played knight to e2, you don't have anymore the possibility to support your center with the move c3. So in the game, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to e3, a6, preparing this flank attack again, b5. Never lose tempos in opposite side attack games. So you see Teimour Radjabov is playing very actively here. a6, b5 with an immediate flank attack. Don't lose any time in order to attack your opponent. Here, queen to d2, b5. We have a3, again a blocking idea on the queen side. We have queen to b6, again attacking further this d4. We have a knight to e2, and we have c4. So what Teimour Radjabov accomplished here is now really a blocked position. So basically, he risked this whole attack in order to keep a compact position. The bishop, of course, can be moved on to b7, but the problem is this is really a bad bishop. The bishop on b7 is really blocked out by this pawn structure in the center. Still, this knight will find a way into the game somehow. Of course, also this bishop on e7 can be placed at least on e7 or similar ideas, but really this bishop on c8 is now blocked out. But this is really a nice idea here by Teimour Radjabov, because sometimes in the French defense you can see that your opponent will castle even queenside. That's why this is all possible, because we have now an advanced pawn structure here on the queen side. We have really made some progress, and we have really strategical advantage. We have here the pawn on c4, which keeps us basically safe, and still the position in the center is blocked. So I'm not seeing a good way how white should make progress in order to attack now the king in the center. In the game, g4 was played by Garry Kasparov, and we have now h5. So that's what I meant. You see, what white would love to do here is to play the move f5, but so far f5 is not possible because we have h takes g4. So this is the problem of this flank attack, that white hasn't made progress immediately. And if you try something like h3 in order to maybe support this g4, then you get h5 anyway. So that's what I meant. You can face really this blocking systems with h5 and g6 ideas, then bishop to g7, maybe bishop to e7, but it will be very hard for white to make progress here. If white tries something like rook to g1, then you see, then we have a new possibility to create a blockade with the move h4. So you see, black can block out the whole king side. He has basically solved his problems on the king side. I'm not seeing again a good way how white should make progress here. So that's why Garry went into this fast attack with the move g4, but you have to again crack the position with the move h5. G takes h5, rook takes h5, and now knight to g3. Rook to h8, not a problem, and we have now f5. As I said, white's main idea is to crack the position here around this e6 square. So in the game we have e takes f5, knight takes f5, and now knight to f6. Very nice liberation move here by Temur Ajabov. Of course, if you take, you lose your knight on f5, and then this bishop comes very actively into the game. So this bishop is supposed to be our bad bishop, so that's why Garry Kasparov retreated with the knight to g3, and we have now knight to g4 attacking the bishop. We have bishop to f4, and now bishop to e6. Okay, at least this bishop is now a good protector. It's of course not well placed because it doesn't have good activities, but at least it's a part of the pawn chain, because now our main weakness is basically, from black's perspective, the pawn on d5. So but I really like black's position. Black went out of this opening very well, I think, now with this potential queenside castling, because the best way to attack in this opposite side attack games is when you have pawns. So basically Garry Kasparov has already played with two of his pawns on the king side, and now the king side attack, I think, is a little bit splashed. You don't have good attacking possibilities. h4, h5, h6 is simply too slow, and basically this bishop and the rook are protecting, of course, this h6. The knight is also a good defender, so that's why I think so far great game by Temur Ajabov. So c3, we have bishop to e7, knight to g5, we have queenside castling, and now knight takes e6. Okay, after f takes e6, white gave up his good knight for basically a bad bishop. But okay, we have now a new target for white. It's the weak pawn on e6. Here in the game, bishop to e2, played by Kasparov, and now a very nice tactic here. Knight takes e5. We have queen to e3. I'm not going to explain now this whole game from this tactical point of view. I just wanted to point you out that basically, as I said in the beginning of the video, that tactics are possible most of the times in the center. So here, after the move knight to d7, we have queen to e6 was played, and now bishop to h4. So here queen to g4 played by Garry, and now g5, bishop to d2. And here I want to stop. White has lost a pawn. Now black has really a great attack with this bishop. We can even give up maybe this bishop for the knight on g3, going into a favorable endgame, because, as I said, sometimes these bishops are simply too blocked out, and Temur Ajabov won this game with a great positional continuation. But what I wanted to point you out that sometimes don't be surprised when your opponent queenside castles, or if he stays with the king in the center. So these are really common ideas of the French defense, and here I think in this game Temur Ajabov surprised a little bit the legendary Garry. Both of these games that I've shown you will be in the description below. You can really analyze them from this tactical point of view. I'm not going to talk so much about tactics in this series, because it's not important. I think it's more important to understand the strategies of the French defense. Then it's much easier to find the tactics, because strategies in the French defense are the most important thing. This opposite side attack elements, this positional trades of pieces, the knight maneuvers, their king in the center positions, when to castle, when not to castle, and similar ideas. So okay, this will be now our introduction video of the French defense. In the next video we'll also do this classical or this normal variation with some more explanation of particular moves, because now we have solved some strategy problems. Now in the continuation we'll also solve some tactical and some other problems in this very nice opening. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this video. Meanwhile, you can watch my other analyze French defense games video so far. Here's the link, and you can also watch my hyper accelerated Dragon Sicilian defense series, in which I show you a nice and effective way how to play with black against e4. And you can also check out my King's Indian and Nimzo Indian videos, in which I show you also an effective way how to play against d4. And you can also subscribe to my channel if you like this content. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.